Coming up next on The Voice of Alabama Politics, the 10 Commandments. Also, Reggie Jackson speaks the truth. And the Cannabis Commission has something for Judge James Anderson.
Okay, Lucy, you asked for it.
Ooh, it's not good to play silly buggers with a judge. All this and much, much more coming up next on The V. Welcome to The Voice of Alabama Politics, where we tackle the tough issues so you have the hard facts. I'm your host, Bill Britt, and as always, I'm joined by Susan Britt, research guru extraordinaire, and Josh Moon, investigative reporter and columnist at APR. Welcome.
Hi, guys.
Hey, y'all.
Well, you know, it's summertime and it's supposed to get a little bit more laid back in the political world. And in some ways, it has. But not over at the Alabama Medical Cannabis Commission, because recently, the Alabama Court of Appeals ruled against AMCC over several rulings they had before them and sent it back down to the circuit court to Judge James Anderson. Now, I mean, the order from the appellate court was hardly in the mail before they filed a bunch of motions to once again mandamus Judge Anderson. In other words, they are acting like Judge Anderson is incompetent or worse, and they keep trying to go to a higher court to get a different opinion. Now, Susan, all they're trying to do, in my opinion, is to delay and deny and not allow the public to see all the machinations that went on behind the scene in awarding these licenses. And it's because there's something stinking.
Absolutely. They do not want these depositions. That's very clear. Because I think in my opinion, when these depositions come out, we're going to see a whole lot of machinations that shouldn't have been going on, that were going on. Because there's no reason they went in, they wrote their own rules to contradict the legislation that came out to guide them. Executive committee meetings that, were behind closed doors that shouldn't have been behind closed doors. There's all kinds of things that we can see without the depositions that are wrong. I can't imagine what we're going to see when we actually get to the depositions.
I mean, Josh, the three of us have covered politics for a long time. And when you are doing everything you can to go against a judge to keep depositions from happening, you got to have some pretty big secrets you want to keep hidden.
Yeah, well, I mean, we've taken a look at this process from the start, and it's never made sense.
No.
It's never made sense what's gone on, and I think what probably happened at the beginning of this thing was some we'll call them mistakes. Some mistakes were made. And then ever since then, it has been a scramble to try to cover up those mistakes or correct those mistakes in some way that didn't get everybody into some level of trouble. And I think when you put those things before a judge, it doesn't matter what judge. I don't care what judge you put this in front of. You can put it in front of it's gone now to a circuit court judge. It's gone to the appeals court. It's gone to the Alabama Supreme Court. There's nobody else left to say, hey, these are legit arguments that are being made here. All right. I mean, and it spans the gamut of politics as well, of party. So, I mean, I don't think anybody's going to say that the Alabama Supreme Court's a bunch of liberals running around up there,
No.
And neither with the appeals court. So when you've taken these things to those places, there's obviously a problem. And I think that we're going to find out what the problem is, or they can just admit to the problem and say, let's just do this the way it should have been done from the start.
And that is the problem. They have not followed the law as written by the legislature, as signed by Governor Ivey. And Susan, all of this gets lost in the fact that this was all done in the hopes of providing relief for people that are suffering. But you know what? John McMillan has come out and said these are frivolous lawsuits. They're not frivolous.
They're not frivolous.
These are trying to get people to follow the law. The AMCC lawyers have put up every excuse in the world. And the only thing I can see is they have not acted in the interest of those who need the drugs. But I suspect they are acting in the interest of the big players who want to distribute those drugs. Now, that's my suspicion.
There's one common denominator here: money.
Yeah.
And who gets it?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And Josh, we always know if it's money involved, and this is big money, you can't trust these people. And they've got 9 lawyers being paid over $1 million to defend
Of taxpayer money.
to defend
Of taxpayer money.
AMCC against all this nonsense.
Yeah, you know, you're right. All the answers it usually boils down to money on something like this, and you're right. There is a lot of money to be made here. There's a lot of money that's going to be made as we go forward with this thing, which is why you put in place these processes to make sure that everything is on the up and up. And see, I don't care who gets a license. I really don't. I don't care who gets a license, but I would like to have some confidence in the fact that the laws that we passed are being followed by the group of people that we put in charge to follow those laws. You know, I don't fault any company for trying to get an advantage in this thing at all. I mean, that's what companies do as long as you're not breaking the law. Now, if you're breaking the law, that's a different thing. But I don't fault any company for trying to get an advantage. But I do fault the people who are supposed to be following the laws that are not following those laws.
Yeah.
That's a problem.
And I have to say, this is one law that they actually thought it through when they wrote it, which is so rare in what they do in the Alabama legislature. They really thought it through, and all these stopgaps all these goals that would need to be accomplished to know that we're getting a good company.
Yeah.
So for the love of God, will you follow the one good piece of legislation we've had in a while?
Well, and it's not, I mean, it's the lawyers that are the problem.
I know.
It's the lawyers. But then again, you have to go, the leadership has let this happen. Let's be honest. I love John McMillan, but any other leader would have gone in and fired the whole bunch and said, okay, I mean, the first time when they had to come out and admit that the scoring was all messed up, fire everybody and start over again. You know, if I had reporters that screwed up stories as bad as these guys have screwed this up, there's no way they'd work in journalism again.
No, they'd be gone.
I mean, Josh, last words.
Yeah, I think that they were caught in a situation where they're going to get sued on any side of this thing now. And so the only solution to it, to me, is either start all the way over or just allow the court to fix the mess.
Well, I think
you're not going to get it any other way, I don't think.
And I think the swiftest way to do it is let the court fix the mess. But there's a hearing on July 2nd. We'll find out. You're watching the voice of Alabama politics. We'll be right back.
My personal biggest pet peeve is kids who are not properly restrained, whether that be in a booster seat, a car seat, or even a simple seatbelt. Kids, they become projectiles, and it's terrifying.
It absolutely breaks my heart to know that something so innocent could be punished so severely.
Your children rely on you to be that person that says, no, you need to put your seatbelt on.
Your home is your most valuable asset. But what if someone tried to steal it from you? Property fraud is one of the fastest growing areas of fraud in the country today.
As a district attorney, I've seen firsthand the devastating effects of property fraud. That's why I'm proud to support the Montgomery County Probate Court's REACT program.
REACT is designed to protect your property and to give you peace of mind. By signing up, you'll receive an email notification if a document is filed against your property.
This program is a game changer. It has the potential to prevent fraud and protect countless homeowners throughout Montgomery County.
So don't wait. Sign up for REACT today and protect your home.
Protect your home with REACT. Sign up today.
Welcome back to the voice of Alabama politics. We've heard a lot from Republicans coming out and talking about what a great success the legislative session was and all the things that they accomplished. And there were some important things. But this past week, the past week, 4 Democrats, very strong Democrats, leadership, came out and held a meeting in Tuscaloosa in which they talked about their perspective, Susan, of what happened. That was, it was Chris England, Curtis Travis, A.J. McCampbell, and then State Senator Bobby Singleton. And they were not as pleased with the efforts as the Republicans were. I mean, Senator Singleton, I think, summed it up best when he said that they just ran them over the first 5, basically 5 weeks of the session. They just ran them down, like as they used to say, they could hear the locomotive coming to run over them.
Right. The train's already left the station, as Bobby Singleton is famous for saying. Yeah, they talked about the failure of the Gambling Act. They talked about the Choose Act, which I know the Republicans think it's a great thing, but the rest of the thinking world really doesn't. They know it's something that you're just putting money in, people's pockets that should stay in the education system. And some of those failures that happened during the session. And it's good to hear that the Democrats are getting together and bringing these things out instead of just letting the Republicans hold the mic all the time and say how wonderful it was when it wasn't.
If I were a Democrat in office, I would have a press conference every day of the session to get the press out there and say, look at what they're doing. Look at what they're doing. Because
that's what Mike Hubbard used to do.
Well, when the Republicans were in the minority, they'd get out there and raise holy heck about how what the Democrats were doing and how corrupt they were. And you know what? Finally, people listened. But Josh, they also pointed out, and I thought this was really good, how they were able to work with the leadership to get things done and also water down some more of the more egregious or outrageous bills that were coming through the House and Senate.
Yeah, one advantage to having a bunch of zealots who are not very bright on one side of the aisle is that you can sometimes manipulate the legislation that they're signing in ways that they don't really realize that you're manipulating. And so I think that's absolutely true. And I think we know of some of the things that they were. Some of their more talked about bills were really watered down by Democrats in the process. And let's be honest here, by some of the Republicans that were more moderate, who did not want some of these things and who found some of these things to be reprehensible that they were trying to do. And so they worked behind the scenes together to kind of water these things down. They still passed the bill and took the PR hit nationally on some things, but in actual implementation of those bills, it's not going to be as bad on people as it could have been. And so, and as I've told the Democrats many, many times, some of these things, the Republicans are doing you some favors, such as that Choose Act. Make sure that they own the Choose Act from here on out. Make sure that everybody knows that you had nothing to do with the Choose Act, that it was all them taking money out of your kids' schools. Because let me tell you what's about to happen. As soon as we start jerking out the $100 million, and then on top of that, the 200, the 300, the 400 that's coming down the line, and your kids don't have supplies in their classrooms, and they're hitting you up left and right for them, or they can't take field trips anymore, they're going to be looking for somebody to blame.
Yeah. Well, and that's why I say get out there often and early and point out what's going on so that people know.
I mean, the children already don't have supplies in their schools.
No.
The parents are already, and this has been going on for years.
Yeah.
And now they're taking additional money out.
When we were
Sounds real conservative to me.
We were helping to raise those 3 young school-age children, Hispanic children. You and I basically had to have a U-Haul truck and back it up to
Oh, they saw me
Walmart.
coming at Walmart.
Back it up to Walmart and fill it up with school supplies.
And
not for
Kleenex
them,
and paper towels
but
and-
for
and
the classroom.
you know.
Yeah. But anyway, I want to move on. Josh, you wrote a column that I thought was very poignant. And I would find it hard-pressed for anybody to disagree with this unless they were just terminally ignorant. And that is when Reggie Jackson came out a couple of weeks ago and spoke about his time at Rickwood Field in Birmingham and the racist taunts and the fear and the challenges he faced.
Yeah, it's I think it was a stark reminder of exactly what people faced on an individual level, and I think it's something that a lot of people should take into consideration, and I think it's also a valuable lesson that we're not being really taught at this point, and I think a lot of people are trying to stop those lessons from being taught because they don't want to tie the fact that we have a generation of people that were just had a foot basically on their neck for in every walk of life, where my grandparents and my parents had advantages and things that they could pass on to us. My grandparents owned a business up here, and so we did fairly well. I never worried about a meal. That was not the same for so many people, and only somebody with an extreme amount of talent can overcome and gain that wealth, like Reggie Jackson. It's somebody like that can get out, but for the common black man in America, especially during that time and moving forward, it was the hurdles were too high for most people, and that I think that explains a lot of what we're facing today in the black community, and honestly, just in poverty-stricken areas around the country right now.
And I think, go ahead, Susan.
And as famous as he was, for him to be turned away from restaurants, be turned away from hotels, can you imagine how much effort had to go into just being able to eat and find accommodations to do your job?
Yeah.
Just to do your job. I mean, that huge hurdles there for him.
And remember, this was just 60 short years
You know, the
ago.
frightening thing about that is we're not that further along. We're not as far along with race relations as we should have been from 60 stinking years
Yeah,
ago.
and I think one thing that happened when President Obama was elected, people go, see, we elected a black man. We're not racist anymore. And again, I don't think many of the people that don't understand are racist. I just think they, like you and I were talking the other evening, because we had white privilege, we never thought about things that deeply from a black person's perspective, but we're learning to, and all of us should learn to. Reggie Jackson's story should be taught in every school, grade school, so people understand. You're watching the voice of Alabama politics. We'll be right back.
My personal biggest pet peeve is kids who are not properly restrained, whether that be in a booster seat, a car seat, or even a simple seatbelt. Kids, they become projectiles, and it's terrifying.
It absolutely breaks my heart to know that something so innocent could be punished so severely.
Your children rely on you to be that person that says, no, you need to put your seatbelt on.
125, 620. As a paramedic, you wouldn't believe the things that we've seen.
I've seen all types of horrible things.
I mean, we're there basically picking up the pieces from your worst day.
Everyone is just driving and not paying attention.
We all have the same goal. All of us want to go home alive and safe and harm nobody else in the process.
Slow down. Be careful. Care about the other people on the road. Don't be the reason that someone else doesn't go home tonight.
Welcome back to the voice of Alabama politics. Gun violence is an issue all across the nation. It is especially an issue in the southern states. I would say red states more. I was reading a story by Chip Brownlee at the Trace in which statistically, gun violence is higher in Selma, Alabama, than it is in Chicago. Now, we know statistically, and these are from CDC and other statistics, that Alabama is the fourth most dangerous state for gun violence. We have the fourth largest amount of gun violence in all the United States and DC. And that children and teenagers, the largest killer of children and teenagers are guns. Guns kill kids and teenagers all the time.
Yeah, like for instance, last Sunday in Montgomery, there was a shooting where 13 people got injured. But there were 600 rounds fired. Who has that kind of money? Who has access to that many rounds at a time, and who's selling that? We've got 11.
Well, I can walk in a gun store tomorrow and buy all that.
Yeah, I know. That's two available is what I'm saying. We got 1,149 people die and 3,065 are wounded in guns each year, just in the state of Alabama.
Now, Josh, we also know from statistics that states that have stricter gun laws have fewer gun deaths or people being wounded with guns. But we don't seem to want to learn that lesson here in Alabama.
Well, I think the biggest problem is like with a lot of things, we paint this in a black and white issue. And so as soon as you started talking about gun violence, there are people out there that said, "Oh my God, he wants to take our guns. We got to stop him." And it's insanity. All right. There are many a step between taking all of our guns and implementing sensible gun regulations and requirements, such as with the First Amendment. Nobody screams, "Oh my God, they're trying to take our First Amendment," because you can't scream fire in a crowded movie theater and put people in danger, or because you can't libel someone or slander someone. Nobody claims that those things are taking away our First Amendment. All right. But with guns, any movement to say, hey, we should require people to go through regulation or through training for these deadly weapons that they're going to carry around in public with them. We should require people to store them properly. We should have background checks for all sales. We should not allow these private sales to take place without there being a background check and a requirement for them to be reported. We should report on ammunition purchases, and especially in large quantities, so people can check those things out and know what's going on. These are common sense things that should be done. And I don't think that there's a large pushback from many people, except when you take them all and you couch them in, "Oh, they're trying to take our guns."
Well, what's wrong with taking away bump stocks? What's wrong with taking away automatic weapons? Why do we need those in the public? Those are military-style weapons.
Well, they're weapons of war.
They're weapons of war. They're not for going and shooting little bunny rabbits. Okay, they're for shooting
not if
people.
You want to eat. But the thing is the base of the Republican Party does not want any restrictions on guns, and therefore the politicians are afraid to do anything about guns. As a matter of fact, in Alabama, we've made it easier to get and keep a firearm, against the will of the sheriffs and police officers that have to face those firearms.
And we lost 110 teenagers last year.
Yeah. But anyway, I want to move on. Louisiana thinks it has a panacea for all things, and that is to put the 10 Commandments into the public schools in Louisiana. Now, it is now mandatory that every classroom in Louisiana have the 10 Commandments displayed prominently in a font that is readable from a distance. Susan, we've already had lawmakers come forward and say they want to pass the same law here in Alabama. I would first off remind them that the 10 Commandments are a covenant between God and the children of Israel. It is not a covenant between the United States or even Christians that read your Torah. It's in the Torah, and it is for Jewish people. Now, I'm not saying we can't learn anything from it, but this was already adjudicated before the Supreme Court in the 1980s.
Right.
Kentucky passed a very similar law, and eventually the Supreme Court said this is ridiculous. It violates the separation of church and state. It serves no secular purpose in the classroom, and if it doesn't, then it doesn't belong there.
Right. And you go back to separation of church and state, which, by the way, and I know everybody says, well, the Constitution was based on this. The Constitution is the Constitution. The founding fathers also put in there the separation of church and state. Okay, we got that in there pretty early. But I don't really think that God's intention when he gave those laws to Moses was for them to be used as a political tool, which is what it actually is. They're using the Ten Commandments or anything that they can as a political tool to gain ground. Even though there are, I tell you what, why don't we put the Baptist version in there and see how the Methodists feel about it? When you're talking about, other people have other religions that are in school, and it's not just, the Christian religion. If you went in there and you just put the Bible, the ones that
well, if you put the Quran in there,
well, yeah, if you put the Quran in there too, that's exactly what I'm saying.
But Josh, I think Louisiana did this. They know that the law failed before the Supreme Court, the one in Kentucky. It failed. But I think they look at Sam Alito, they look at the Clarence Thomas, and they say, you know what, we've got a shot this time of getting this approved by the Supreme Court. I don't think they have any illusions that that's not it.
Yeah, no, I think that that's absolutely the case. I think that they've also looked at the fact that now we're able to send public dollars to private religious schools through our Choose Act and through other programs like it around the country. And it's interesting to me that Louisiana has done it while at the same time not properly feeding all the children in their school, and also that the Louisiana Republicans have done it while at the same time nominating a man who was just on trial for violating half of them. So I mean, it make some sense to somebody every now and then,
Yeah. Well, unfortunately, we've run out of time because I was going to suggest that anybody that wants to vote yes have to pass the test that they haven't broken any of the 10 commandments.
Lie detector test.
Yeah, but we have to leave it right there. You've been watching the voice of Alabama politics. You watch us because we watch them.